In this video, we're going to be creating a gratuity calculation program. When you go to a restaurant and you dine in, it asks you to tip your waiter or waitress. So we're going to be making a simple calculator to go ahead and do that. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get some option buttons, which they call radio buttons. So I'm going to open up my toolbox. Just a friendly reminder, if your toolbox you cannot see, Control-Alt-X will bring up that toolbox. We're going to scroll down to radio button, and we're going to need 4 of these. So let's go ahead and double click 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then each of these radio buttons will be a certain percentage. Now, you can make these any percentage you want. I'm going to make the first one 10%, the second one 15%, the third one 18%, and then the last one's going to be custom. I'm going to show you how to name these, and then we're going to fast forward where they're all named. So what you want to do is click one time on the first radio button. Before you change the text, you want to change the name. The names cannot have any space, and the prefix for radio buttons is OPT, which stands for option, or the option buttons. So I'm going to call this one Opt 10. I'm going to call radio button 2 Opt 15, the third one Opt 18, and the last one Opt Custom. Let's fast forward so we can see that done. Now that we have them named, we need to change the text. When the user sees radio button 1, 2, 3, or 4, they're not going to have a clue what that means. So we're going to scroll up and we're going to change the text property of our radio button. So we're going to call this last one, we're going to say custom. That way the user knows that they can type in a custom percentage. Maybe they had awesome service and they want to leave more than 18%. Maybe they had terrible service and they don't want to leave, say, 15% or even 10. Maybe they don't want to leave any tip whatsoever. Hopefully that is not the case. So we have 10%, 15, 18%, and then custom percentage. We are also going to need 3 text boxes. We're going to mess with 2 and then we'll do the third one, but we are going to need 3 text boxes. So open up our toolbox. We're going to double click those text boxes 3 times. I'm going to put one right over here, one right here, and then one right underneath custom, which we'll get to in a minute. Now, the first one is going to be TXT subtotal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name that text box TXT subtotal. The reason you want to name your text boxes is so you know what you're using when you start introducing variables, which we'll be doing momentarily. So I have TXT subtotal. I'm also going to have TXT total, which will be my total value, and the prefix for text boxes is TXT. And you want to use those prefixes when you're using text boxes, so that way you can name your variables what you are working with. And we'll show you what we mean here in just a minute. This other text box, I'm going to go ahead and name TXT custom, and that's for the custom percentage. What I need to do now is I definitely want to resize this form. This is huge. So let's go ahead and do this. I need to label what these text boxes are. If I just start my program, the user is not going to have any idea what these text boxes do. So let's open up our toolbox. Let's double click to labels. So I'm going to put label 2 right in front of the second one, label 1 in front of the first one. It doesn't really matter because we're going to rename these anyway. So the prefix for label is LBL. So the first one's going to be LBL subtotal. I'm going to change the text property to total. That way the user knows what goes inside this text box. And then this next one, I'm going to change to, I want to change the name first, want to get in that habit, to final total. It may just be final, let's see. Yeah, I want to keep my labels the same as the text boxes. You don't have to do that, but it's nice to do it because then everything kind of lines up nice and neat when you're trying to do anything with your code. And then I want to say total, and we'll say total with tip. There we go. Okay, so there we go. So we have our total with tip. The one thing we want to also do before we start coding is I want to click one time on this text box, which is our TXT custom, and we're going to be looking for the visible property, and we're going to change this to false. And that's because we don't want the user entering anything in that text box unless they've selected the custom option. We're also going to need two buttons, a calculate button and an exit button. So we're going to go to our toolbox, we're going to double click the button twice, and then we're going to move button 1. It doesn't really matter because we're going to rename them. We're going to have button 1, we're going to name it BTN calculate. The prefix for button is BTN. So BTN calculate, I'm going to change the text so it says calculate. The user is not going to have any idea what button 1 does. So we'll say calculate. This one I'm going to call BTN exit. And you could leave it as button 2. The problem is when, and I don't know if generate member should be true. It should be true. So I accidentally changed that there. So if you don't name these or you don't have text on them, it can be a little hard to remember what each button does. And it only takes a few moments to name them, and you'd be doing that in a professional setting anyway. Sometimes you'll see tutorials where people just have button 1, button 2. I really would strongly advise not falling into that bad habit. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to flip over to our code. We're going to double click our form, and then it brings us to our code. Now we're going to need some variables. We're going to create global variables. This is usually a beginner program. It's a great way to learn how to do math, how to use option buttons, how to include them with text boxes, and how to format currency. So there's a lot you can learn here. We're also going to, just dip our toe into error prevention, preventing our program from crashing. So we're going to be doing a lot, and it's not a lot of code. It's not overwhelming, but it's a lot of good things that you can learn. We're going to need a variable called subtotal, and that is going to be a decimal. It's going to be a real number, because very rarely do you go out to eat and it come out to a nice whole round number. We're also going to do custom percent, or custom, not customer. Let's just do custom percent, because they can enter their own custom percentage. And then we're going to do our final total as a decimal. So this is why you want to use prefixes. So we have subtotal. If my text box was named subtotal, I wouldn't be able to use a variable called subtotal. By putting the prefix in front of the text box object, txt, I can now use the variable subtotal, which refers to the text box subtotal. The first thing we want to do after we do that is go ahead and exit the program, which is simply application.exit. So then we're going to go back, and then what we're going to do is we're going to handle the calculate button so they can enter 10, 15, 18, or custom. So let's go ahead and double click this calculate button. The BTN calculate click event, when you see this right here, you'll see these subs, which are procedures. When the user clicks on the BTN calculate button, all the code inside this procedure, inside this sub, will run. So the first thing we want to do is we want to take what's inside the subtotal text box and load it into our subtotal variable. Subtotal, my variable, what am I setting it equal to? I want to take what is in the subtotal text box, I want to take the text, and I want to put it inside subtotal. That's what I want to do. And so subtotal is being assigned the value of whatever is in the txt subtotal text box, and I have to say I want the .text property. I cannot do this. This is going to issue a red line because there's so many properties. You have to tell the computer, okay, what property? And we want the whatever the user has entered inside the text box. Now, something else that can happen is our custom percent needs to be loaded, and if there's nothing there, that's fine. And we'll talk about, this could throw an error. We'll talk about how to fix that. Now, when they enter the custom percent, we need to convert that to a decimal. So what we're going to do is we're going to do custom percent, and we're going to divide that by 100. That will generate it into a percentage, and then we'll handle the math to do it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do if. If you watched our if statement video that we posted the other day, or that I posted the other day, you will see that there are efficient ways to use if-then statements rather than having a bunch of if-thens, having it in the right order. If you haven't watched that video and you're new to programming, I strongly suggest you check it out. So if opt10.checked equals true, And then what we're going to do is we're going to say our final total is going to be equal to our subtotal, and we're going to multiply that by 1.1. And the reason for that is if we multiply it by 10%, the problem that we're going to run into is we're giving them a 90% discount. We're only charging them 10% of the meal. That's not what we want to do. We want to keep the subtotal, which is the 1, and an additional 10%. Well, what's 1.0 plus 10.1? That's 1.1. So that's where that is coming into. And then else if there's another option, and that could be where opt15.checked equals true. And if that is the case, then I want to do my final total equals subtotal times 1.15. But there's another option, and that is 18.checked equals true. Then my final total will equal subtotal times 1.18. Now you may be saying, well, could I make these all different if statements? And you could. What we want to do is we want to program with efficiency. It's as soon as it encounters the first if statement that results in a true Boolean value, then what it's going to do is it's going to skip over the rest. So it's looking for the if statement that satisfies the condition. So if opt10.checked equals true, if that is the case, it will not check the rest of these. Now there's one more option, and that is where custom.checked equals true. And then what we are going to do is our final total equals subtotal. Now, because we converted that to a percent earlier, what we need to do is we need to do 1 plus the custom percent. Now, if you're wondering where the 1 comes in, remember, just like for 10%, we have to do 10% plus 1, which is 1.1. We need to do 1 plus the custom percent. So if they enter 20%, then that would be 1 plus 0.2. So we don't want to multiply it by 20%, but 1.2. So that way we keep the original subtotal in. Then what we want to do after all these if statements have been run, we want to take our txt total.text and we want to set that equal to final total. So we'll clean up this code in a minute because there are some things that we're going to need to do. But let's go ahead, run this, and make sure our math works. So we start our program up. We should not have any red lines, and it will start as soon as it loads. Build has succeeded, and here is our program. Okay, so let's do our total as 10. Now, 10% of $10 is $1. This should come out to 11. And we have an error. Okay, so what we're going to do right now, because there's nothing inside that text box, we're going to comment these out. And I said earlier, this may throw an error, and it does. So we'll fix that in a moment here. So we're going to have $10, and we're going to do 10%. That should be 11. It is. 15% should be 1150. It is. 18% should be 1180. And it is. Okay, so we had an error here, and we have to get the custom percent working. So here's what we need to do. The first thing we need to do is make the text box appear. So we're going to go over here. We're going to double click the opt custom button. And what this means is when you see check changed, it means when it becomes checked or unchecked, certain things should happen. So what we're going to do, we're going to do if opt custom dot checked equals true, meaning it is highlighted. Then we want to make that text box visible. There we go. So then if it's visible, it equals true. We can also do else if txt custom dot checked. Oh, and you want to put that in the right spot. And you always want to be looking where you're typing. And that is going to be checked equals false. Then, and we're going to do txt custom dot visible equals false. And it's not txt, it's opt. Or let's see here. Yep, opt custom dot checked equals true. There we go. That'll fix the issue. So let's run this and let's just see if we can get that text box to appear and disappear. So every time it changes, so we see 15, 18, we click on custom, there's the text box. when they click on 10, 15, 18, it is disappearing. So that works out well, but we're still going to have this error. So here's what we are going to do. And I told you we're going to be doing some error prevention. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in try. And what this means is we're going to try this set of code. And then if it doesn't work, then what we will do is we will go ahead and say, hey, we need to catch X as exception. And you want to spell exception correctly. And all this means is, what do you want to happen if there's an error? Please fill in the text box. And then what we are going to do is end try. That is what we are going to do. So that will allow us to run this code and actually try to prevent the wrong thing from happening. So let's go ahead and run this. Oh, the first thing we want to do is uncomment that code. That's not going to be helpful. And we're gonna run into an issue here in a minute, and you're gonna see why. In just a moment, you're gonna see why. So when we hit calculate, it says please fill in the text box. So we fill in the text box, we want 10%. It still says please fill in the text box. So it says please fill it in, but it's still calculating it. So what we need to do is we need to figure out, where does this code go? Because if I get rid of it, the try statement still works, because what it does is it allows me to prevent the user from typing in something they shouldn't. For example, fill in the text box. We want to make sure the total, there's something typed in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and allow you to pause and figure out, where should this code go so our program doesn't crash, or what can we do to make sure our program doesn't crash? Okay, so we have our, we've paused. Maybe you've taken a chance to figure out the exception. So what we're going to do, or the error, so we need to put that code somewhere. We can't just, not have it somewhere. And there's a couple different options we can have. I'm going to put mine under the if opt custom.checked equals true, then text custom.visible equals true, but I can't put it here. Now that I'm thinking about it, I can't put it there because it's not going to give me time to check it if it goes there. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to need an if statement here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do if txt custom.text is not equal to a blank, meaning there's something there. Then I can do my custom %, and we don't want to have that equal sign there. If it's not equal to blank, then we can take whatever's inside the custom text box, we can put it in custom %, we convert that to a percentage, and then that should work. So let's go ahead and try that now. So that is only if it's not blank. So right now it's blank, there's nothing in it. Type in $10, and we're getting a calculation without any issues. We want to make sure the custom percentage shows up. We're going to do 20%. That should come out to $12. And it does. So it looks like it's working perfectly. And we can go back and we can calculate here. And that's why we need those if statements. Okay, what we need to do now is we need to fix this currency. So what we want to do is, we don't want it to be 11.0 or 11 or 10.8 or whatever it may be. So what we're going to do is we're going to simply type in format currency, and we're going to put this inside our parentheses. When you do format currency, you have to put something inside the parentheses, and it wants to know, okay, you're going to format the currency. What are you formatting? And we're formatting final total, our variable, and that's going to convert it to a currency. Let's go ahead and run our program. Let's check it one more time. This time we'll do $100. And 10% of $100 should be $110. It is 15, should be $115. 18 should be $118. Let's do our custom. Let's do 25%. That should come out to $125. It is, it's working. So that is how you use radio buttons. That is how you use if statements. That's how you use the try catch statement. Because remember, the try catch statement, if there's nothing here and we hit calculate, we're letting them know, hey, please fill in the text box. If you don't have that there, your program is going to crash. So if you have any questions, please post a comment below. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, help the channel grow. If you have any questions or a suggestion for a future programming video, please post those in the comments below. We'll see you guys in the next one.